Okay, let's have a look here. Paste. Hey Walt, great to have you on this call. Hey guys, thanks for joining. I see Grant's already joined. Quick on the draw there, guys. Well done. I'm just going to pin this title to the top, and we'll crack on. Just get Grant on the line here, and we'll crack on with the call. It might take a couple of minutes. I know they're obviously in quite a remote location. There he is.
Hey,
Are you,
Gemma.
Grant?
Very good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good, man. Your background looks amazing. It makes me want to be in the Serengeti right now.
Your yurt looks pretty good as well there, Gemma.
Thanks, buddy. How's your day been? What you been up to?
Yeah, it's been a good day. We kicked off early this morning, went and took some photographs of one of our successfully naturalized zoo rhino, Laikipia. She's looking really good. Got some great photos of her this morning. The guys found her close to the edge of the IPZ, so I went in and took advantage of that, and then just landed an hour or so ago from flight with our pilot and Husky, and yeah, found a few more of the rhino that were recently released in last year, and yeah, they're all doing really well there. So it was a great day.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Just an average day, average Thursday for you. Awesome, man. I'm so excited about today's conversation. Thanks so much for making the time. And I think for those of you guys who are joining in, great to have you. I'm chatting to Grant Burden from the Grumeti Fund, and he heads up the Special Projects Program. And I've had the honor of spending a bit of time with Grant in the field, and I can safely say that he's probably one of the most humble, passionate individuals that I've met in my travels around Africa. And yeah, really, man, I mean that. It's a real honor to be able to chat to you today, and I'm glad that we're getting some people following along. So guys, please feel free to ask as many questions as possible. We will try and save some time at the end to get to them. And I think Grant's wife, Beezy, has also very kindly offered to see if she can answer some of the questions you guys might have. We're going to be chatting a little bit about, Grant's role at the Grumeti Fund, where he's based, and then, a very special project that is ongoing. And I know, Grant, very close to your heart. So again, thanks, but really appreciate you making the time for us today.
Oh, thanks, Gemma, and thanks for the such a wonderful introduction. It's very kind of you to say those words. Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say from my side as well, thanks very much, Gemma, for giving us the opportunity to catch up. First of all, it's been a long time since we had the privilege of working with you and your Black Bean team up here. And I have to throw back some of it at you. The dedication that you guys show and the work that you do is quite something as well. So, when you were up here for all those years doing all the work that you were doing, yeah, I think it was inevitable that we were going to become good mates. So it's good to catch up and chat to you again.
Oh, that's very kind, man. How are you guys doing? And how I mean, I haven't actually had the chance to speak to. We've been connecting with a number of NGOs on the ground. No one as of yet in Tanzania. How's the lockdown treating you guys with regards to obviously trying to successfully run a fund and obviously having the lack of tourism currently?
Yeah, I mean, it's a global pandemic, so we're not immune to it. It's certainly had its negative effects on us in terms of the just globally the amount of money available to do the work that not just us but every other conservation organization in the world does. So that's obviously had quite a significant impact on the way in which we operate. We've tried to the best of our ability to not let that sort of upset our day-to-day operations, like what we spoke about 5 minutes ago. The rhino monitoring and the flying of the aircraft and everything has to carry on, and it is. So we've been really creative and managed to get around a lot of that stuff. But yeah, in general, where we are, we're in one of the most iconic ecosystems in the world. The Serengeti ecosystem. We're on the western edge, forming a buffer zone to the core area of the Serengeti National Park, and it's almost like an eerie feeling to know that in an area that sees probably upwards of 1 million tourists a year has not got one in at the moment, and it's not through lack of trying from everyone involved in conservation and tourism to try and help people realize that um, while making sure you're doing a responsible thing and traveling responsibly, it's still here, it still exists, it's still got to carry on, and there's a lot of organizations and tens of thousands of square kilometers that absolutely rely on the influx of visitors through these areas. So yeah, like I said earlier on, it's almost like an eerie feeling to know that there's not one single tourist, due to the fact that all the countries in the world are locked down and airplanes are flying and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really, really strange time that we're experiencing here right now, and it's also quite disconcerting that there's no real light at the end of the tunnel there. No one really knows which way it's going to turn. But yeah, we don't want to turn this into a negative COVID-19 chat. But that's the reality on the ground. And yeah, folks are working hard to try and make sure that it doesn't affect us too much.
And I guess the positives, with regards to you guys, is that you are still on the ground, and there's still, obviously a presence, within the Grumeti Fund reserves, where, I think in a lot of other areas, that's obviously a big concern. So that's really encouraging to know.
Yeah, the word you used there, presence, I think is a really important one. In a lot of areas, there are tens of thousands of square kilometers. It's not very easy for people to police every last square kilometer of an area, and that's where tourism really kicks in, with game drives and guests and camps all fully operational and supply vehicles and everything. Just that presence, goes a long way to just adding an extra level of security to these areas. So the fact that there's very few people other than those that are charged to look after the place moving around, their presence has been depleted big time.
Yeah, for sure. And Grumeti, I think it would be really nice, for people who have tuned in today, just to kind of get a little bit of an idea of, who you are. I think, again, if I think about just your day-to-day operations and, the work that you're involved in, it's, it's very hands-on, and I guess, no day is the same for you. And I think, for a lot of aspiring conservationists, younger chaps, having a role like yours would be something that a lot of people would aspire to. Could you give us kind of an idea of, where your passion for the natural world stemmed from, and how you got to, I guess, working in the greater Serengeti ecosystem where you're based today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's quite easy, and I was in a very fortunate position growing up, being born to a family that where this sort of stuff meant a lot to them as well. My dad, who I owe a lot to, everything that sort of shaped my conservation career to now, sort of stems from my old man and how much I looked up to him when I was a really little guy. He was working for the old Natal Parks Board at that stage. This is 30 odd years ago. I was born when he was stationed in St. Lucia on the eastern shores of Lake St. Lucia. And yeah, I think he had some of his most enjoyable and memorable times in conservation, as a game ranger per se. in those areas, eh? And yeah, I think so just from a very, very young age, it's like that was just instilled in me the importance and the beauty and everything that goes with these beautiful areas that we are fortunate enough to call our workplace. And then as as time went by, got into it after school, went straight and studied a degree in conservation. And actually, my first posting post university was on the eastern shores of Lake St. Lucia, working for the now transitioned EKZN Wildlife, Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife, from the old Natal Parks Board. So needless to say, it didn't take much for my old man to jump in his vehicle and travel up from the Natal Midlands at any opportunity he had to come and visit me. And I live, a couple of k's down the road from where I was born. So that was a really enjoyable time. And then from there, got into. I've always had always had this yearning to work and live in wide open spaces. Moving to East Africa, Tanzania, is probably it's probably one of the most iconic countries on the continent when it comes to wide open spaces. You got the Selous Game Reserve, 50,000 square kilometers. One of the largest game reserves in the world. So yeah, I got the opportunity to move up to Tanzania and grabbed it with both hands. And I think to your point about getting other young guys into this sort of game, to take those opportunities and not be afraid to get out there and work in these remote places, and just take it all in, because it's a very romantic notion, working in conservation and these big open spaces and lots of wild animals, but there's a lot of sacrifices that come with it as well. But if you have to live with those and live through those, then it's such a small world. The conservation world in Africa is so small. Everyone's connected somehow. Very, very quickly, you'll get people starting to realize, where the folks' passions lie and where their interests lie, and then it'll just help people to latch on to those folks and take them forward. Yeah.
And your role, Grant, within the Grumeti Fund, you're obviously a specialist role, and you're head of special projects. Could you give us a little bit of kind of an idea of some of those projects that you have managed in the past, obviously working collectively with the team at the Grumeti Fund?
Yeah, for sure. The idea of special projects was a brainchild of our current director, Steve Cunliffe, where the Grumeti Fund had progressed from its inception under the first managing director, Brian Harris. He started the fund. It had progressed a hell of a long way in a short period of time, and as time went by, there was so many things that everyone within the fund knew would just take it to the next level and just take it to the next level. But it wasn't always a very easy thing to just drop your day-to-day, running operations out of 170,000 hectare protected area with a lot of challenges and traffic and everything through it. So the idea of the special projects was for a department which would be able to work alongside the already entrenched departments within the Grumeti Fund: law enforcement, conservation management, research and monitoring, community outreach, and play sort of a cross-cutting role and take those sort of cherry-picked projects that would really elevate each department to the next level and actually run with those, working alongside the department head to make sure that these projects were actually researched properly and implemented with the right partners, and in a short space of time. Instead of taking 3 or 4 years to get something done, we now had the ability to get stuff done in 6 to 12 months. Because it was a dedicated person running it, driving it every day, working alongside the rest of the team, that was making sure that our daily operations weren't compromised. So that's in a sort of broadly speaking sense, that's what the special projects role at the Grumeti Fund is. And then to go into a little bit of detail about some of the projects that we've managed to do over the last couple of years that you were asking about, James. The first one that we sort of sunk our teeth into was a collaboration with Vulcan, a philanthropic organization from Seattle, Vulcan Inc., and they were busy developing a protected area sort of management system. They call it the domain awareness system, and it's basically a user interface or a platform off of which protected area managers can manage all assets, and just have a thumb on a finger on the pulse 24/7. And with that, we set up our new ops room, which is now run by our head of law enforcement, Wesley Gold. And that's like the Grumeti Fund nerve center right there. All information from all aspects of our operations, partnerships, everything all goes through our joint operations center, and it's all managed and accessible at the touch of a button, literally. It's a phenomenal piece of tech, and that kind of set the scene for special projects and the role of tech and our ability to actually integrate it into our operations moving forward. So that was the start, yeah. And then just to quickly name a few others, the Canine project. We've set up a really well-run canine unit here now. Conditions and the sort of, I should say, the scenarios that we have here and that we experience here really lend themselves to successful dog operations, both tracking and detection. So that's been a really good success, and I am certain that we're going to see that project grow from strength to strength as it embeds itself even more over time. We've stuck out on the research and monitoring side of things. We've stuck out a camera trap grid of over 300 odd cameras throughout the protected area.
Wow.
And that is a collaboration with the University of Minnesota Lion Center, driven by our head scientist here, Kristen Denninger. And yeah, she's has the unenviable job of going through, I think we must be in the millions now, camera trap photos, of sorting through all of that sort of stuff. We actually employ a sort of a citizen science platform to help us do that. So that's a hell of an interesting project in itself as well. And then, as we get closer and closer naming these projects, we get closer and closer to naming the Rhino project, which eventually came along. And I'm sure we're going to chat a bit more about that as we go on now. But centered around the Rhino project, we started an aerial wing in the Husky that we were flying just now, doing Rhino monitoring. Essential parts of law enforcement and Rhino monitoring. And yeah, we've looked at other aspects of camera trapping as well, more towards the law enforcement side of things, which has huge value as a sort of a force multiplier over large areas with long linear boundaries. When you've got limited manpower, a piece of tech like a camera can be an extremely useful tool. So yeah, that's kind of the sort of the flavor of the special projects role, is to take a piece of technology that importantly has been tried and tested in at least in a few other places, so that we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's our ability to actually build partnerships and collaborations with people with tried and tested technology that has applicability within our concession areas. Yeah, so yeah.
No, awesome, Grant. Thanks for diving in there. And I think again, I've seen you in the field, and it's always quite remarkable to see how hands-on you are, and how broad your skill set is. Obviously, you're working within a team, but yeah, hats off to you for for always, like I say, being able to step in. And I wanted to play one or two videos here. We've got a little bit of a poor line, so I don't know if it is going to work, but let me know if you might not be able to see it, but the viewers might. This is
I can see
you guys.
Yeah.
This is you guys collaring elephants so that you can monitor their movements, and just a very short clip of kind of you in action. We won't talk too long about these various projects because we're actually going to want to move on the conversation. There's another another interesting video here as well, which we'll talk to now. Because, you know, certainly you guys face a number of challenges out there as well, you know, with regards to dealing with things like human-wildlife conflict, in this case, you know, a snared lioness. And you know, these are things that you need to face, you know, literally daily on the ground with regards to, you know, responding to and obviously trying to, you know, trying to reduce the impact on wildlife while still working with people. What are some of the challenges you face while working in the field in the greater Serengeti ecosystem?
Yeah, so we we have a boundary on the western side of the concession areas that are it's about 130, 140 odd kilometers. And immediately on the other side of that,
Yeah, I think we got, yeah, I got you back. I think there was a comment saying it was a little bit echoey. I've got your comms pretty good. Every now and again, I lose you for a second, but yeah, I've got you loud and clear now.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like the echo's still there. Maybe I should just try and hold it and see. So some of the echo is still here. I don't know what causes that.
I can. I think we can still hear you, Grant. There's a bit of an echo.
Okay.
So I was asking about some of the challenges you know, you have on the ground, Grant. Certainly, as a film crew, we were exposed to, you know, a fair amount of them while spending some time with you guys. What are some of those challenges that you have to deal with on a kind of day-to-day basis? Some of the bigger challenges you face.
Yeah, so I started alluding to the fact that we have, you know, like a boundary of about 130 odd kilometers between protected area and community, and that's a porous boundary. It's unfenced. You guys in the work that you were doing up here with the human wildlife conflict filming, you got to know that boundary and that interface very, very well. So that is obviously a huge challenge. You know, wildlife is free to move into the community areas. It's an extremely long boundary to try and maintain the integrity thereof. There's probably close to 100,000 people living along. It is, you know, where, you know, there's not a great deal of opportunity. You know, there's a lot of folks that are really, you know, having to think out the box to try and eke out a living and sustain themselves here on a day-to-day basis. So that presents huge challenges. Mostly in the form of our law enforcement issues. You know, poaching. And one thing that has to be said as well, this is one of the most dynamic ecosystems around. You know, there's 1.2 million wildebeest that move through these areas.
Insane.
At least once a year, twice a year. And yeah, when you sit on one side of the boundary and it's just a small stream separating you between, you know, what could be a hungry day or two, from a herd of 500,000-600,000 wildebeest, just, you know, a couple of hundred meters away. It's just, it's quite something, you know, that juxtaposition. And for people to actually live in total harmony with nature in a situation like this, I think it's almost unattainable. You know? I mean, you and I in desperate times would be faced with the exact same challenges. So yeah, but at the end of the day, it's a protected area, of which there are many around the world, and all of them I think are pretty much in the same boat. You know, it's 2020. these places are under huge pressure from human population burgeoning. So we have a responsibility to protect them, and we do whatever falls within our mandate and our partnership and collaboration with the Tanzanian government to try and uphold that. So yeah, so the challenges are, they're not insurmountable, and they're also no different to a lot of other protected areas around the world. Just at times here, they, they seem very acute when you have things like growing seasons and harvest seasons in the village, and a couple thousand elephants on this side of the boundary that have full access to that, and vice versa when you have a couple of hundreds of thousands of wildebeest on this side of the boundary, and you have people that are on the other side, thinking to themselves, well, that's a pretty hefty source of protein. So
Yeah.
it's where we kind of live in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, our eyes were really opened. I think again, spending time with you guys, and again, for us, it's it's just a chapter and a short visit and an insight to what you guys deal with on a daily basis. And I know it's a real challenge and a real balance as well. And very different when you're living and breathing, these kind of environments every single day. And I think that's often something that most people just visiting an area don't understand. These areas are challenging to protect, and it's not an easy job. I'm getting feedback, Grant, that the line's much better, but so all good, and we've got you loud and clear now. Something we wanted to go into a little bit more detail about during this call was another really exciting project that's currently ongoing. And it's the rhino translocation project, where eastern black rhino are being brought back into East Africa and into the Serengeti ecosystem. And I would love to hear a little bit more about how this project first started. I think some of us don't know that once upon a time there was a large population of rhino, both black and white, in East Africa. What happened to this population? Did they share a similar fate to what we faced in Southern Africa?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to try and put it as succinctly as possible, East Africa, who knows what the actual number of black rhino was in the 40s and 50s and 60s. People, the early professional hunters and folks that were documenting what was going on around these places in those times would talk about, seeing hundreds of rhino a day in extremely small areas, high densities of animals. But obviously, we don't have to go into any detailed explanation about why rhino are being poached right now, for their horns, and that's nothing new. We've seen a massive upsurge in that over the last 10 years. But as early as the late 60s, 70s, and early 80s, I think, was when the vast majority of Africa's rhino were killed for their horns. And unfortunately, Tanzania and the Serengeti ecosystem were not immune to that. They, just like nearly every other country in Africa, got almost totally annihilated. The black rhino in these areas. So that's where this project stems from. It's way back then. There's a few facets to this project. One of them, which I can maybe deal with first, and then put it aside, and then deal with the next aspect. But one of the facets of this project is
Hey guys, we seem to just have lost Grant for the meantime. Again, please do bear with us. We're chatting to people in very remote places, and often reception is a bit tricky.
Yeah, I got you back there, Gemma.
All right, good. Sorry, man. You were just about to go into it, but yeah, I got you loud and clear again. Crack on.
Yeah, so similarly, when rhino were being nailed at a alarming rate in the 70s and 80s, um, and before then, there were obviously a few very forward-thinking conservationists around at that time, and a lot of East African rhino were sent all over the world, almost as insurance populations, because the writing was on the wall on the continent that these things are disappearing
Yeah.
fast. So what we have right now, a couple of decades later, 4 or 5 decades later, we have in zoos and sanctuaries around the world, third, fourth, fifth generation zoo bred or captive bred eastern black rhino. Um, those animals retain a remarkable amount of their natural instincts. And this we've seen through the translocations that we've successfully managed to do from overseas, from the UK, North America, back to Tanzania, back to the Serengeti ecosystem. These rhino, whose ancestors 3, 4 generations ago were captured from these areas. And that, as an aspect of this project, has been very rewarding, to be able to do that. Purely to see these animals come from areas where they are extremely well looked after in these ex-situ facilities, and to watch them go through that journey and what we call the naturalization process, and have them actually set foot back on Tanzanian soil, and start living like wild black rhino. It's a without anthropomorphizing it too much. That you can't imagine what that rhino must be going through. I mean, obviously it's a stressful time, the translocation and things, but you look at them a couple of months, a year or two down the line, where they have successfully naturalized into areas that historically held, extremely high numbers, high densities of black rhino, because it's such phenomenal habitat, is it's really, really rewarding. And
Goosebumps stuff.
yeah, it is. It's really rewarding. It doesn't come without its challenges. Moving black rhino from any situation to another situation is fraught with challenges and things. And we are also not immune to experiencing our fair share of failures amongst the successes here. But at the end of the day, I think the net result is a really, really positive one. Um, so that's the one aspect, and then obviously the other aspect is moving. So those are basically captive bred rhino that have to go through a whole process, to make sure that they have the ability to withstand and build up a resistance to all the natural factors and phenomena around here. But then there is the opportunity to move just out of range wild eastern black rhino, of which there's a population in South Africa, and that was the source population for the large translocation that we undertook last year in 2019. And just to say one last thing about source populations for rhino, in Kenya is probably outside of Tanzania. The only place where you could really source wild black rhino. But Kenya, like Tanzania, has, over many decades ago, suffered massive losses due to the poaching that had taken place, and there is still vast areas within that country that still need to and will be, if the trend continues, be repopulated one day by eastern black rhino that have come from within that system, in situ. So so for now, the options that we go after are bringing in out of range ex situ type population rhinos, and try and integrate them back into the existing rhino population in the Serengeti ecosystem. We're basically performing a bolstering function, because there is so much available habitat here. If we were to leave it, which we could well do, to sort of grow organically and naturally, it may take many, many, many years, longer, decades. They're a hell of a long-lived species, relatively slow breeding. So we're just trying to cut off cut off the decades to the recolonization of all these phenomenal black rhino areas within the ecosystem by artificially placing them in these areas to then grow these satellite populations.
And I mean, it's no easy feat moving rhino, is it? I mean, you were talking about moving rhino from South Africa up to Tanzania. I mean, that's an incredible distance, you know, for, you know, animals exceeding, I guess, a ton. Walk us through this process. What I'm going to do, it's you know, it's so funny with these live calls. I guess you need to improvise sometimes. You know, you don't always have the greatest comms. And I had a couple of photographs that I wanted to bring up on my phone, but I'm just going to flip my screen, and I've got them on my computer, and maybe you can talk to them. But yeah, walk us through the process, some of the challenges involved, because I know it's no easy task, and how you actually got the animals from South Africa into East Africa.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I can talk to it in no particular order, really. I mean, if we're just looking at what you have up on the screen there, that is that's our law enforcement manager, Wesley Gold, trying his luck and skills at marshalling a Hercules C-130 cargo plane. So we've got that terrible a Hercules C-1, our airstrip here. There's precious.
Hey, Wes must have loved that, eh?
Yeah, I'd love to know what was going through his mind right there and then as that thing was picking up dust and barreling down towards him with his hands in the air. But yeah, that was probably, in all my time here at the Grumeti Fund, that was probably, will go down without a doubt as one of my most memorable occasions. And yeah, I think there were quite a few quiet tears shed when that plane touched down with this first lot, I think at 6. Yeah, it was quite something. There was yeah.
So I just want to reiterate, I've got a couple of pics here. I can just imagine what it must have been like watching that that plane land on that dirt run strip just next to Sisakwa Hill. And I see Wes looks like he's clenching his bum a little bit. So I'm sure all sorts of things were going through his mind. I've got a couple of images here that I'm going to scroll through, and Grant, and maybe you can talk to them and let me know if there's anything else you want to add in terms of just the process in terms of getting these animals onto or into the area. And I also just want to mention that these are Sasha Spex's images. He was working on behalf of on assignment for Black Bean Productions and documenting this particular project. And I know, I chatted to him earlier this week, and we got chatting about this project. I know for him it was one of the most amazing things to encounter as well. So rhinos were literally in this aircraft, in crates, and they arrived literally in the middle of the Serengeti ecosystem from Johannesburg.
Yeah, that's right, Jamo. So they were transported from a facility in South Africa by road, probably a 4 or 5 hour trip by road to OR Tambo International. And yeah, from there you undergo the long and arduous process of exportation and clearing and loading and packing and making sure that everything is absolutely 100% set for the journey up here. These particular rhino, there were nine that were transported on this occasion. All 9 of them were loaded into a Boeing 747. First and only time probably that I'll travel upstairs at the top of the bus on the Boeing 747. But yeah, the underneath of that plane is phenomenal. The capacity, you load 9 rhino crates in the belly of a 747, and you could probably stick another 15 odd in there. It's a phenomenal aircraft, and yeah, so they that makes for a pretty short trip from Joburg to Kilimanjaro International Airport for those 9 animals. We landed just before light in the morning, having left.
Sorry to interrupt, Grant. So just obviously these rhino are inside these crates over here. Are they having to be monitored, incredibly closely? Are they
Yeah,
sedated? What's the story with
yeah,
regards to
absolutely.
just,
So
managing them?
yeah, absolutely. So just to backtrack a second, the animals are in a boma. They're in a boma, like sort of log bomas, log pens. After capture, they spend a number of weeks in those bomas, settling down, getting ready for the translocation process. And when it comes time for the actual transportation, we had a very experienced team of vets, three chaps from Tanzania and two chaps from South Africa that made up the veterinary team, and all of those animals are immobilized, loaded into the crates, and reversed to a degree where they are then manageable in those crates, and they actually travel extremely well. They can a black rhino. As one of the ladies that was helping us, Jen, as an animal care expert, she likes to call them spirited. They're extremely spirited, but under the right management protocol, drug protocols from the wildlife vets, they actually travel extremely well. So they're inside those crates, as you can see in the photograph, those steel crates, and they remain in those crates from the time they get loaded in the pens until the time they get offloaded in Tanzania into their pens on the receiving end. Just as you flip over there, that's one of the chaps that we owe a hell of a lot to with the success of this translocation was that man there in the green overall, Kester Vickery from Conservation Solutions. A couple of decades of catching and moving animals around the continent under the belt for Kester, and yeah, we during this whole process, we left no stone unturned. We left nothing to chance. Kester was up here a couple of months before we actually moved the animals. Once we had caught them and got them in the pens in South Africa, and were able to measure and build crates. Kester built all the crates for us. Kester was then up here working alongside us and our Tanzanian partners to make sure that everything from the landing at Kilimanjaro to the offloading of those crates those rhino crates from a 747, loading them into a C-130. It's all different processes, and if one sticks, then you're stuck with 9 live black rhino on the tarmac at an airport, which it's a shudder to think what the things that could go wrong. So yeah, so it's a very, very meticulously planned exercise, and it's a massive team effort. I had the fortunate role of sort of trying to coordinate all the cats that were running around, but it's a massive team effort, and I don't think there were very many people in our organization that were left out of it. This photograph here is one of the animals being lifted off of the sort of the trailer that the crate gets rolled out onto from the C-130, and then brought across to the flatbed. That crane truck loads the crates onto the flatbed, and then from this point they start their journey to the pens by road, which is about an hour or so by road. And yeah, here we've got one of the trucks loaded up, ready to roll. The last picture that you flip to there is the Boma facility in the game reserve, in the center of their release area, our core sort of rhino area.
And at this stage, I mean, I've got to just ask, I mean, are you guys, I mean, there must be, a certain amount of, anxiety and trepidation with regards to obviously this massive plan, going to plan. But you guys, from the sounds of things, had probably one of the most experienced teams collectively in Africa, working to make sure that this was a success.
Yeah, absolutely. The vets play an absolute key role. The two chaps from South Africa, Dr. Cooper and Andre Ace, Dr. Andre Ace, they accompanied our Tanzania Wildlife Research and Tanzania National Parks vets who do all the rhino work in country. So with that team, the ship was being steered really, really carefully and well by those men. But then there's all these other aspects, that aren't so much veterinary related, but all the technical aspects of crane trucks and transport and bomas and doors and all that sort of stuff. And with the team that we have here on the ground, conservation manager Matt Perry, law enforcement Wes Gold, our director Steve, everyone, no one is scared to muck in, and everyone was there, hands on, coming up with plans and ideas, just in case. And everyone thinks of worst case scenario, because you have to. If something does go wrong, you can't just sit back and accept it. You have to make another plan and another plan until the plan works, because you have live black rhino, whose lives are at stake. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal team effort. What goes in at loading to the moment those rhino run out of the crates and settle within the first couple of hours or day or two. And the bit of experience and a hell of a lot of luck.
Yes, sadly we lost you just for a moment there, Grant, but I think we got the gist of it. This must have been one of the most amazing moments as well, when I guess you open the crates up and the animals walk into the boma, and the chances of success are that much greater. What were the feelings around camp after these animals were successfully now in the boma?
Yeah, so I think the part that you lost me on there was that the feeling of being on a knife edge doesn't stop when the rhino walks out the crate. It's still a number of weeks until those animals settle properly, and you can be that they have settled nicely on the and then you take the next step, which we said about national stuff. But the thing, every small, even though it's a every small step of the translocation, like a major victory. You just move on to the next step. So it's always like this of emotions of being nervous and apprehensive about what's to come, but and proud of what's been achieved every step of the way.
Oh, awesome. I'm flipping through a couple more images here just with regards to the process. The line, unfortunately, is a little poor, but that's just one of the things in doing these things and going live, and obviously both of us being rather remote. But I've always loved this photograph, just seeing kind of a moment shared between you and this individual rhino. I think here you can also very clearly, see, the difference between a white and obviously an Eastern black rhino here in this case. Did you find these animals living up to their reputation, while moving them, or are they too sedated? You were referring to one of the, I think, team from the Malelangwe Trust referring to the animals as spirited. Were there any issues or scenarios where you guys did feel a little uncomfortable?
Yeah, I mean, it's these animals are upward of one each of them, which that's just inherently challenging and dangerous. When you are working with them close proximity, they are wild animals, and they're tough as anything. So their self-preservation is a little bit desired. So when one of that photograph there gets here in his head that he's going to go somewhere, there's very little that you can do to coax him otherwise. So yeah, with the loading and the unloading and the movement, the management of these animal pens, I spoke of earlier on when I said from Australia, the Western Territorial Plains Zoo, many years of experience dealing with these animals in captive situations. just a knack for being able to their but be able to reach them, and have the ability to get comfort and security, through routine and a well managed bonus system. So yeah, so we try and mitigate against these animals and doing something drastic, that we were to. And whilst in captivity, we have some ability to do that. But yeah, certainly once we had released them, they very, very quickly turned back into their former selves. And you've got to be on your toes and monitoring now, especially after 6 or 7 months worth of rain and grass. The grass and the thorn tree kind of meld into one now, and the rhino the visibility for a very challenging condition. So the guys have had their work cut for them with the rhino monitoring the last couple of months.
You shared this image with me. I know you mentioned it. I think was at the end of a 400mm lens, so obviously a little distance away from you. And what an amazing image to see. This animal now spending time in a natural environment. I think maybe we've had a little bit of a poor line, but it sounds like I've got you loud and clear now. With regards to the future of this particular project, what is the aim long term? I realize that this isn't a short term project. This is a long term vision that you guys have. What is the long term plan, and how can people support you?
So I think from in the Tanzanian context, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, they have currently are pushing a 5-year black rhino management strategy, of which the 29 kilobyte bringing in these rhino forms a huge part of that. So certainly on the Tanzanian side, the government and the impetus is there to ensure that Tanzania not only has a relic population of black rhino left from severe poaching many decades ago, but to actually actively go out there and go and grow the population to its former and so rhino being inherently long-lived species, the answer to the one side that going forward, this project is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. If we are unsuccessful in moving more rhino to this area, we have a handful of rhino now that we will be after and managing, and they will grow naturally over the course of the next century. And that is what the Tanzanian government has committed to. It's the protection of these animals. We are very fortunate that we are seen as a valued partner that can help. That can help give effect to a lot of this work through our ability to raise funding and awareness and programs on the ground alongside them to make sure that these rhino translocations are a success. So this project in itself, moving forward from a management security perspective, it's started, and it's a century long as they're around undertaking. But if we go back to the project role within the Grumeti Fund, working alongside our Wildlife Management Authority of Tourism, we are in constant conversations and ideas getting thrown around as to where and how we can continue with the momentum that's been created in bringing more rhino into areas. There are many areas, not just the Western Serengeti. Tanzania has recently proclaimed new national parks, which is a phenomenal thing. Those new national parks are afforded a high level of focus in terms of resources and security and everything. So those are prime areas for for the reintroduction of areas where they once thrived. So yeah, so the long-term vision is to be able to continue with raising awareness, what has been achieved up until now, which helps people realize the importance of it and the importance of forward. And obviously, you know, this all costs money. We can't shy away from the fact that chartering, buying 747s, 777, multiple aircraft, just to get one rhino, the one that you had in this picture, where him and I were standing looking at each other. That's like a $300,000 exercise to get that animal out here. An extremely valuable animal that would not have seen his full potential having been left in the North American population, where from a genetic perspective, he is overrepresented. You bring to the situation in Africa, and it's phenomenal what he can contribute to rhino conservation. So people might balk at the idea of, you know, $300,000 or more single animal around the world, but I think in the light of our current situation, rhino poaching is going to rhinos as a species, I think it's a drop in the ocean, really. So yeah, it's an extremely important side of things as well. You know, for us to try and ensure that we have the ability to give effect to the ideas and plans and things that we talk about with our that's an important aspect of it as well.
And what we've done, for those of you still following, and again, sadly, Grant, we've had a little bit of a trouble with this line, but you know, I've got most of what you've just what you've said now. But what we have done is we've also included a link to the Grumeti Fund donate page in both my personal bio and in Black Bean Productions bio. And if you guys are watching this and want to learn a little bit more about the Grumeti Fund, go check out the Instagram page and obviously message them and engage with them, because you know, I know they're very good at you know, collaborating and communicating with people who want to support and get involved. And I challenge you to do that. I know it's a difficult time right now for everyone in this current climate, but this is just one of a number of amazing projects that the Grumeti Fund and Grant are involved in. So Grant, again, I see we're about to run out of time. I want to thank you so much for you know, for taking the time to chat to us today, and again for all the hard graft you putting in and the important work that you're doing.
Well, thanks, James. Thanks very much for taking the time to set this up, and it's always great to have a chat, and it's been also a great opportunity for me to think back over the last year or two, and actually just see what we've able to achieve that. So thanks very much for that opportunity, James.
Absolutely, man. I see Sasha Specs and you know, a lot of individuals within our, I guess, space tuned in to listen today. So thanks, guys, for following, and Bees, thanks for fetching the questions that we got. If you guys have any further questions or any further interest, please do get in touch with the fund directly. Yeah, Grant, again, thanks so much. It's nice to see your face on Instagram Live.
Yeah, no, nice to catch up as well, James. And yeah, we hope when all this current madness that everyone's experiencing is quietened down a bit, to see you and your growing up here shortly.
All right, we'll make that happen. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Cheers, Jana. Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.